Do you have any confidence that there will be any flight that takes off departing this country to Rwanda?
Look, this is a mess that Priti Patel created. She was told that the system was unworkable, unethical, and would cost an extraordinary amount of money. It was very unlikely that she would be able to get a system up and running as quickly as possible, given that the Israelis tried and didn't succeed, the Australians tried and didn't succeed. So she was warned about this, and of course we're now in this situation.
But can you blame her for trying? I mean, we counted yesterday, minimum 250 people, including young children coming across the channel yesterday in almost perfect conditions. You and I both know that if the weather had been worse, lives would almost inevitably have been lost. Can you blame Priti Patel for throwing the dice and trying to do something to stop deaths in the channel?
How do you deal with that? Look, the first thing you do is you negotiate with your French, your Belgian, your Europol partners, you invest in police, you invest in intelligence, you deal with supply chain issues that can come as far from China to deal with the criminal gangs. The second thing you need is a deal with Europe. Now that we're out of the European Convention, there is no Dublin Convention. That means that we can send people back to the European Union who are not entitled to remain in our country. She hasn't done that. And of course, the other thing you've got to do is deal with the asylum backlog. People are waiting up to 5 years. It's costing taxpayers money to put people up in hotels. Your viewers will have seen the queues at Heathrow and Gatwick. They know what it's like dealing with a passport office. Well, it's even worse with the asylum systems where you can wait for 5 years. So that's how you deal with the problems in the English Channel.
That may very well be the case. So why then are they not doing this? Are you genuinely suggesting that the Tories, to a man and a woman, are so opposed to people being able to seek asylum in this country that they're willing to do this? Is that your argument?
Well, the first thing to say is, of course, there's a lot of concern on the Conservative backbench about this scheme. It feels like it's a manufactured row. They actually said that it was unlikely that they would get this through the courts once they set it up. It's a distraction.
I don't think that's entirely fair. I don't think that's entirely fair. I think yesterday, there was a degree of confidence at the Home Office that the flight would take off because they had not heard from the European Court on Human Rights. It was very much a last-minute intervention. Doesn't Therese Coffey, when she was sitting where you are roughly an hour ago, I mean, she said, look, I was incredibly surprised. Never seen a decision from the court that late in the day.
I don't know why she was surprised. People raised the issue of Rwanda's human rights record. They raised the issues of torture. They raised the issues that concern people who were LGBTQ going back to Rwanda. And the court and others have raised that Rwanda hasn't got proper asylum processes, which is why, effectively, these injunctions have been issued and the flight has been delayed. So all of those issues were known. It's not surprising that we're in the situation we are this morning.
Do you think, as the Prime Minister kind of hinted at yesterday, there is any likelihood that this government would move forward with some form of step, some form of legislation that would remove the Convention the Convention on Human Rights from our law, that would remove the ability of the European Court to intervene in this fashion?
Let's be clear. Winston Churchill and David Maxwell Fyfe, Conservative politicians, were the architects of our European Convention on Human Rights. Many of your viewers rely on those human rights that give us protections in terms of privacy, human rights that give us protections in our housing. Well, we would all lose out on that convention that was set up after the Second World War to protect our rights and rights right across Europe because, effectively, this government wants a distraction and doesn't actually want to roll its sleeves up and get on with the business of dealing with the problems that exist in our immigration system.
But you know, because your memory within the Labour Party goes back further than mine, you understand the problems that the last Labour government had for ignoring concerns in parts of the country, concerns about immigration. You know this was something. You didn't mention it for many, many years for fear of being called racist. I remember Gordon Brown and Mrs Duffy. I was there on that day. I mean, the Labour Party seems to be not confronting this issue head on when clearly there is an awful lot of public dissatisfaction with, and I hate to be so brutal about it, dead babies in the Channel.
Well, let's be clear. The Labour Party has not been in power for 12 years.
Of course.
This is their asylum system, which has huge backlogs. This is their asylum system where they have no relationship with France, so they can't create safe routes, they can't create a processing system, and they can't actually deal with the claims that are being made. They can't strike a deal that sends people back, and they're not dealing with criminal gangs. Their system, 12 years in power, and we've got an asylum system that's worse, significantly worse, year on year than France, than Germany, than Spain, all of whom have bigger claims for asylum than we do.
Let's change topics slightly. And as things currently stand, Scotland is not a foreign nation, so technically not part of your brief. But if Nicola Sturgeon has her way, it would be. What is the Labour Party's position on a second independence referendum? Can you rule it out at any point for the next kind of 10 years? Would it be something that you could countenance?
Categorically. We are a unionist party. We believe in the union. We can rule that out categorically.
Is the branch office in Glasgow going to be saying exactly the same thing?
Yes.
Great, good to hear. On Keir Starmer, though, there is a suggestion from within the shadow cabinet that he hasn't been firing on all cylinders, that he hasn't been hitting it. You know, we've got people, from the top down briefing journalists that he needs to give it a bit more welly. What do you need to hear from Sir Keir Starmer ahead of conference season, which is fast approaching, of course, if he is to take this party into the next general election?
Look, we're up in the polls. Mm-hmm. We were so on our downers 2.5 years ago after that election, the worst results since 1935. He has done an incredible job dealing with the issues within the Labour Party, particularly the issues around anti-Semitism, reorientating us so we're looking into the country. We did well in the local elections.
No one's complaining about him within the cabinet, shadow cabinet.
He's doing a fantastic job, and frankly, the tittle-tattle that exists in a small part of the newspapers is not our concern and should not distract us from the job ahead.
Well, the coverage of his performance at the last PMQs, shortly after Boris Johnson has had a very bloody nose, that wasn't made up. It's not tittle-tattle. I mean, the coverage of Keir Starmer's response to Boris Johnson at the last PMQs was almost uniformly negative.
Look, I'm pretty sure that in a week or so's time, we're going to be discussing by-election results and the poor performance of the Conservative Party. That's going to be the debate. Labour is moving forward. We're moving forward very well under Keir Starmer's leadership. It's not just down to Keir Starmer, it's down to all of us on the front bench, all of us within the Parliamentary Labour Party. And I think we're in a very, very strong place if we stay united and committed and clear in our direction in relation to speaking to the British people. We're in a very strong position to win the next general election.
Mr. Lammy, good to have you in the studio. Thanks for joining us.